Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, as I promised last week, this week's episode of the show is going to be looking at some Irish whiskey, independently bottled Irish whiskey at that. And before we obviously talk about who's doing the bottling and etc., there seems to be a lot of controversy at the moment swirling around the Irish whiskey industry, provenance and all this kind of stuff. And you just have to sort of stop and think for a minute. In Scotland, for example, you have independent bottling companies releasing blends, vattings, and single malts from distilleries where the distillery isn't specified on the label for one reason or another, and nobody makes a big deal about these kind of things. It's part and parcel of the everyday goings on of the Scotch whisky industry. But when it comes to Ireland, there seems to be not one rule for them and one for us kind of thing. But as soon as an independent bottling company releases an unspecified single malt or an unspecified blend or something like this, everybody goes, oh well, yeah, it's just another Bushmills or a Cooley. Oh God, here we go again, And it's all this kind of shrugging of shoulders and sort of huffing and puffing, and it kind of, to me, to a certain extent, is missing the point. I personally don't really care where the whiskey comes from at the end of the day. It's how good it tastes and smells and, the quality of the spirit. And yes, all right, we all know that Ireland's distilling history comes down to a handful of distilleries with aged stock. And so, when an independent bottling comes out, chances are it's going to come from, one or two or three places. You know that for a fact. And yes, all right, there's some ropey ones about, but by and large, the quality that these particular distilleries, like Bushmills and Cooley, for example, produce is pretty damn good. So, theoretically, the independent bottling should be good. So I just think it's kind of time to maybe give the Irish whisky industry a little bit of a break here and stop being quite so negative straight off the bat when anything is released. So, but that's just my thoughts anyway, for whatever they're worth. So today's episode, we're looking at some bottlings produced by the Celtic Whiskey Shop in Dublin. Now, technically they're the opposition, that they appear in the same, they're up for the same awards, single retailer and in the world, icons of whiskey and all that kind of stuff, and consequently I believe they've won it on 2 occasions and we have yet to win it. So I shouldn't be doing this, I'm looking at the opposition, but no, joking aside, I don't really care, it's just another independent bottling company as far as I'm concerned. But and also, it's always nice to look at these kind of things. So the Celtic Whiskey Shop in Dublin, founded in 2003 by someone by the name of Alpine. It's been doing its kind of thing, the usual sort of thing that most whiskey shops do, tastings and events and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, they were world's best single outlet retailer in the icons of whiskey for a couple of years, I believe. Was it say here 2017 and 2013, I believe. So they're obviously doing something right. And so not only do they have the whiskey, they also have the wine side of the business as well, and they source casks and all this kind of stuff. And these samples that I've got today are 2 of their ranges. The first is the Celtic Cask range that they do. These were all samples entered into the Independent Bottlers Challenge, which I believe, again, they were non-Scottish Independent Bottler of the Year in both 15 and 16. So again, obviously got to be doing something right. And then in 2016 they added a bar to their shop. Well, no, not directly to the shop, I believe. It's in Killarney, called the Celtic Whiskey Bar and Larder, which again won an award for its excellence, and after being open for just a year. So again, you know, they're obviously doing something right. And so yeah, okay, they got the bar, and apparently at the back of the bar they have something called the Irish Whiskey Experience. Don't quite know exactly what that entails, but I'm guessing you experience Irish whiskey there. But the interesting thing is that they offer in the bar two casks which you can basically bottle yourself, called the and now I'm probably going to murder the Gaelic language and trying to pronounce these names. Cill cask, I believe, is what they're called. So essentially they have two casks, which I think were certainly in the two samples we've got here, I think were originally matured in ex-bourbon casks before finished in various quarter casks, and basically you can bottle them there, you can put your own label on and what have you. So they're all around pretty interesting. They seem to do an awful lot of stuff. They've won awards for it, so you know, I think it's about time that that I took a look at some of their stuff then. So let's introduce today's little lot. Right, okay, so as I said, all these samples were entered into this year's Independent Bottlers Challenge, and like I said, I'm now going to murder the Gaelic language once more and pronouncing the names. So the first one we're going to be looking at is called Fiche, which I think in Gaelic means 22. It's a 16-year-old which spent the first 14 years of its life in ex-bourbon casks, and was then finished in a red burgundy cask from Domaine Monegard Murgeray, I believe is the pronunciation. Apparently they, the wine side of the business, like us, has a number of agencies. They buy directly from the domain, and they obviously have the ability to, you know, buy these casks as well as to finish their whiskey. So could be interesting. Nice colour, it has to be said. Second bottling we'll be looking at is called Fiche, I believe. This is again a 16-year-old, bottled at 46%, and this spent obviously 14 years in ex-bourbon cask before being finished for a couple of years in specially commissioned 53-litre Oloroso casks. So we'll see what that one's like. And the last of the Celtic cask bottlings, this one is called Fiche Haon, I think, which I think means 21. Again, 16 years old, 14 years in ex-bourbon cask, before being finished in, again, specially commissioned 53-litre Pedro Ximinez casks. So could be interesting. And then we're going to look at two of the Cill casks bottlings. I don't know whether these are still currently available. I would probably guess not, as I think they change them relatively regularly. The first one we'll be looking at is a 16-year-old, which I think was, well, it's the 16-year-old Oloroso cask, so I think it's been finished in ex-Oloroso quarters. It is bottled at 47.85 and again is 16 years old. And the second of the Cill cask bottlings is the PX, again 16 years old and bottled at 47.59. So, eagle-eyed viewers amongst you will realise there's a lot of sherry here, and you know what I think about sherry. Like I said, I'm not the world's biggest fan of sherry. I tend to find it sort of very encompassing and often can be rather over dominant, but you know, I still like to try them, and well, we'll see what this little lot are like then, shall we? The thing we used to share, right, okay, so let's kick off with the Fiche. Let's see what one of those gives us on this end. Quite balanced actually. there's some nice spicy red fruits. I mean, obviously being a red Burgundy cask, this will be Pinot Noir. So it's got that kind of lighter sort of red fruit kind of character, more cherry sort of notes. Some underlying sort of bourbony character, a bit of barley, bit of sort of almost kind of chocolatey spice, slightly earthy. Yeah, that's not a bad nose at all in actual fact. I think that's quite well balanced. The finishing cask is quite noticeable, but yeah, I think on the whole, I think the balance is not too bad at all. Let's see what the palate gives us. Well, bitters a bit at the end. Really quite spicy. Lots of red fruit, a little bit of bitter tannins, like I said, a little bit of chocolate. Quite mouth-watering. It's heavier on the wine cask finish on the palate. There's a little bit of vanilla kind of comes through on the finish, but the palate does seem to be very, very heavy on the red wine. It's not bad. I mean, it's pleasant enough. It's certainly, I don't sort of get 16 years old. I don't really seem to get a sort of an indication of its age, to be purely honest with you. Although, like I said, the quality is pretty good. But I think the finishing cask is kind of a little bit too dominant. Certainly on the palate, but I thought the nose was really well balanced. I thought that's pleasant. So yeah, not too shabby, I don't think. Okay, so let's move on to the Fiche à Tree. So this has been finished in Oloroso. Let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Again, the nose isn't too unbalanced. I'm certainly getting the obvious Oloroso-y kind of dried fruits, the slight spice, the earth, but I'm also getting a little bit of American oak, a little bit of barley. Again, it's got some pleasant depth. I can't really sort of get much in the way of an age. There's possibly a little bit of that sort of oxidative baked fruit kind of character coming through, which does kind of give you the impression of some age. A little bit of coffee, walnut, skin. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think the nose is too badly balanced. Too badly balanced? Is that correct? Oh, I think the nose has a reasonably good balance, is what I'm trying to say. So let's see what the palate gives us. Very succulent, very smooth, very soft, but very sherried. Slightly treacly, bit of wood smoke, plenty of raisinated fruit, sort of in that sort of dark raisinated end of the sherry spectrum. Again, not really getting much in the way of age. A little bit of spice kind of just coming through on the finish now. It's clean. That is the main thing. There's no sulphur blemishes. It's very sort of silky, very smooth. There's no rough edges. There's no harsh tannins. There's none of that kind of sort of gritty Oloroso-y kind of herbally kind of character. It's very polished, and I can see the appeal of it. I mean, I must admit, it's not. I mean, I do enjoy a sherried whiskey every now and again. It has to be said, but. Again, I would just like to have seen maybe the balance of the nose on the palate, but it just does seem to be a little bit sort of heavy on the Oloroso. But again, I don't think you can, you know, quibble about the quality. Okay, so let's move on to the Fiche Haon. I don't know. Number 21. Anyway, let's see what the nose gives us. That is very, very PX. Really grapey, winey, sweet dark grapes, treacle. It is just PX sherry. I mean, that's all I can smell, and I do remember kind of my when I wrote the tasting notes, my comment was, well, if I wanted a glass of PX sherry, I'd have had a glass of PX sherry, and it's very clean. All right, it's kind of, you know, this is the sort of whiskey that you're either going to love or, you know, you're not going to love. I mean, like I said, on the plus side of it, perfectly clean, no sulphur blemishes whatsoever. But it's just all PX. There's no light, there's no shade. It just is what it is. So let's see what the palate gives us. Pretty much the same as the nose. All about the PX. It's grapey, it's winey. There's a little bit of green nuts. Again, I couldn't tell you when I tasted this blind. I mean, I only knew it was in between 13 and 20 years old. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what the age was. It just does not kind of give you any indication of that whatsoever. Again, the sherry is very clean, it's very rounded, it's very soft, and you know, if you love PX finished whiskies, then you know this is certainly going to be one that you would enjoy. Again, for me, I would just like to see a little bit less of the PX, to be honest with you, but again, not a particularly bad bottle. Right, okay, so let's move on to the first of the two Cill and casks. This is the Oloroso. Let's see what that gives us on this then, shall we? Soft, it's a little bit reticent. There's dried fruits, there's a slight herbalness. Again, it's very rounded, it's very polished, it's very Oloroso. There's a sort of a bit of vanilla beneath. There's a little bit of barley, possibly. I suppose with these things, if you actually sort of kind of go hunting for the for those specific aromas, you'll probably pick them up. But again, this is very, very much Oloroso dominated. It's very clean. There's no blemishes, and like I said, you know, I don't know what they charge for these bottlings for sort of hand filling them, but you know, I think if you love Oloroso finished whiskey, then you know you would be perfectly, you know, happy with your purchase, shall we say. Again, for me, I would just like to see a little bit more balance, but you know, I'm just being pedantic. Let's see what the palate gives us then, shall we? Again, big, mouth-filling, juicy, a little bit of bitterness. I mean, slightly elevated level of alcohol kind of is drying the finish a little bit. I possibly should have brought some water, but I haven't got any. But it's got a pleasant spicy finish, kind of tongue-tingling spicy finish. I mean, there's a lot of kind of Oloroso character going on in there, it has to be said. You know, you are getting the sort of the woody notes, the dried fruit, that kind of thing. I mean, it has the sort of the complexity you would want from a sherry matured whiskey. But again, there's no real kind of light and shade. I don't get any American oak. I don't get any real sense of its kind of age. But again, it's, you know, the whiskey itself is perfectly pleasant, and you know, you can't argue with the quality. And finally, let's move on to the Cill on PX cask. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Again, big, chunky, juicy, treacly, grapey PX. It really is just all about the PX again. And my comments for this are probably going to be exactly the same as the other, the Oloroso cask. I think if you like that sort of big, treacly, toffee sort of you know, sweet sherry kind of character, then you know, you're going to really like this. Again, to me, it just lacks a little bit of balance, a little bit of light and shade. Again, no blemishes, no sulphur, completely 100% pristinely clean, which is always a good thing. So it certainly goes to show that the custom casks they're having made are doing the business, shall we say. Yeah, let's see what the palate gives us. Quite smoky on the finish in fact, lots of slightly bitter dark chocolate, and I like bitter dark chocolate. I much prefer that to milk chocolate. So it has its plus points, but again, same as the nose, it's very much Oloroso dominated. It's dried fruit, it's sherried, it's big, it's you know, it is what it is. A little bit of green wood on the finish, a little bit of burnt green wood, bit of scrub, you know. I mean, it's pleasant. And like I said, I think if you're a sherry cask aficionado or lover, then you know, you really are going to sort of enjoy these bottlings. For me, well, yeah. Anyway, let's probably sum this tasting. Right, okay, so the Fiche, I thought the nose was really nice, well balanced nose, certainly getting, you know, both the sherry, or the red wine, sorry, and the American oak on the nose. Palate a little bit too heavy on the wine, but I guess I would say probably of the three of the Celtic casks, for me, possibly the most successful of the three bottlings. The other two, the Fiche Tree and the Fiche Edu, kind of, well, the Fiche Tree kind of has a little bit more balance on the nose, but again, the palate has kind of succumbed to the sherry cask, and obviously the Fiche Haon with the PX is just all PX, and for me, again, like I said, it just kind of lacks a little bit of light and shade for my personal taste, but that does not mean that it's a bad whiskey. That's just me. And I think the same could be said for the two Cill casks. I think if you like that kind of style of whiskey, you are really going to love these particular bottlings. And you know, why not? You know, have a trip over to Dublin and or Killarney, as the case may be, with these two. Visit the bar, have the experience, shall we say, and come away with a cherry monster. Well, why not? You know. But like I said, for me, you know, you are always going to be on, not a loser with me with regards to sherry casks, but you know, I'm probably a little bit more sort of, is critical the right word? Possibly. You know, if you're going to do sherry, then for me it's got to be done sort of, well, right is the wrong word, because it makes me sound like I am the sort of the everything about whiskey, when I'm not. I just have my tastes like everybody else has with regards to whiskey. And you know, like I said, I think if you look at the quality of these, the quality of all of these casks is absolutely fantastic. Really, very, very good. You can't knock the quality of what they're putting in the bottle. Whether it's your taste or not kind of comes down to your own personal opinions, and some people, like I said, will love them and some people won't. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the whole world of whiskey. Whether they kind of really come across as particularly Irishy is a sort of, again, a difficult thing to say, because the finishing casks on the whole are pretty dominant. But I mean, you know, I think you have to kind of like take your hat off to, you know, the Celtic Whiskey Company, or Celtic Whiskey Shop, as the case may be. They're trying something a bit different. They're doing something, you know. I mean, all right, you know, finishing whiskey in sherry casks and wine casks is not exactly new. The industry's been doing it for years, but you know, trying something a little bit different. Why not? You know, just putting their kind of spin on things, I suppose. And obviously, like I said, you know, they've won many number of awards, and they must be doing something right for their customers. So you know, who am I to argue with that? But anyway, so like I said, I think on the whole, you can't knock the quality of what's in the glass. It's just maybe not quite my cup of tea, as they say. But anyway, so that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope I've been fair with my assessment of these whiskies, but yeah, if you feel strongly one way or the other, there's always the comments below the video. So anyway, next week, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing next week, because everybody's going to go, oh God, are you doing that again? So anyway, you just have to sort of watch next week's episode of the show to find out what I'm going to be doing next week. Anyway, until then, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good ramming.